Yes, hello and welcome to the Brainstormer, where we will be coming up with ideas on the fly from our crazy prompts. You never know what the Brainstormer is going to bring to us. So, let's go ahead and get started. All right, our first prompt. If I'd still be alive. Yes, if I'd become a painter, I'd still be alive. What does that give you? All right, think of that one. So why would somebody be still alive if they had become a painter? That is the question, right? I like this little hook. Because perhaps, there's some sort of magical connection to something. It's almost like, I guess, the picture of Dorian Gray, right? But, imagine, somebody, as long as they can paint something, they can maintain their life. That would be pretty cool. So you have, like, an immortal person. Because as long as they keep working on this painting, they continually stay alive, and it's like they never can finish it, so they have to just keep working on it over and over again. And like maybe it like freezes them at a certain age, so this person keeps interacting with this other person, and they're like, you just keep working on this painting, you're never done. And they're like, no, it can never be finished. I love that sort of stuff. I like when things that seem rather arbitrary are connected to something extremely important, and trying to find that connection can be a lot of fun. It could also be a great thing for inspiration, right? Think of how something that seems completely disconnected from something else, just say, you know what, they are connected, and then try to figure out why that might be the case. And that can often give you a really fun story hook. All right, moving on. 73 people have died opening up that door. What door? I don't know. What is the door that 73 people have opened up, and why do they keep dying, It's a very interesting question. And maybe it's actual, they've literally died. Maybe it's like a metaphorical death. Maybe they just get emotionally upset because like it's facing something about yourself. This is a room in which you face a severe part of your life. And so it's like your childhood dies because you grow up by going into this room. I like that. Or maybe it is simply just that many people have faced it. Maybe it's some sort of challenge. I'm thinking it's like Indiana Jones, and you have to be astute as to the right one. The person chose poorly. Choose one of the doors. 73 people chose the wrong one, apparently. But again, you have the question of something that doesn't seemingly have to do with something else. Why would death be connected to a door? And you can even go more abstract. 73 people have died with this decision. Opening up that door. You can think of it, again, as a metaphor. And that's a great way to raise stakes. 73 people have tried to go on this mission you're about to do, and it hasn't worked out well for them. So now we've upped the stakes for the protagonist. Maybe one of those near the top of the building that leads nowhere but down. Yeah. And again, maybe this is something where a lot of people think it yields a great result, but ultimately it's just destructive. All right. Think of a famous story. Do not share what it is. Think of a famous story, but don't tell me what it is. All right, so get that in your head. Famous story. It could be anything. It could be a movie, TV show, children's book, novel, whatever. Does not matter. All right, so think of it. All right, once you have it in your head, okay. It turns out the villain is on the right side. Curious what your stories were out there. Because, that's a common thing that's being done nowadays is people like these retelling of stories where characters that you thought of were villains were actually the heroes and the whole thing is skewed. But it can be a fun way to turn a story on its head because sometimes if you only look to protagonists to influence other protagonists, other main characters, you can get a little stuck or you can get a little samey. Instead, think of a villain that you really like and then ask yourself, what would it take for me to deconstruct that story and make the villain the hero? Now, I'm not saying you have to do something like, moral relativism or something like that. If there's something reprehensible about the villain, you can adjust that. I'm saying, what are the personalities that draw you to the villain? What makes them interesting? You can keep a lot of those things and then put them in a different framework that actually makes them the hero of the story. And so you've created a new protagonist, a new main character that's more interesting perhaps than if you just looked at another hero from another story and you're like, oh, you know what? I want a character that's kind of like, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. All right, think of a verb, any verb. You do not have to tell me what it is. In fact, don't tell me what it is just yet, because we're going to do something with it. So think of a verb, some action word. Feels like your old Mad Lib days, doesn't it? All right, so now that you have a verb in mind, every day I blank until today. So what is that verb you came up with? This is kind of like the Pixar formula. The Pixar formula is every day blank and then and then one day all of a sudden this happened because of this blank and because of this. That is like the Pixar format of creating a story often. Every day I walk until today. Interesting. That doesn't sound super dramatic, but perhaps it is, right? Why this person might do walking for exercise on every day, but now they're not. And it's like every day but today. Maybe they're injured and they can no longer walk. Maybe something happened that was traumatic around their walk around the neighborhood and now they don't want to do it again. Something creeped them out. Something was unsettling. Maybe they're now imprisoned and they no longer can walk, right? As soon as you disrupt somebody's daily routine, it can escalate tension quickly. It's a great place to start. You'll see a lot of books will do that. The opening will be the normal day in the main character's life. And then they see that disruption and you get to experience that. And that could be something as simple as, somebody can't get their morning coffee to start out with because it'll escalate. But it's a tension point that just hooks you in immediately because you can relate to that. You can relate to having your patterns disrupted. You can relate to a tension point such as that. Ooh, excuse me. All right, so write down the title of another story. You can use the same one you used earlier if you want, or you can think of a different one. We're going to go another direction, as you probably can guess. So take a moment, think of a story, a movie, television show, book, whatever. Okay? The protagonist failed. Now what? So the protagonist failed. So usually in a book, you have a moment where the protagonist has some major success. This is not that case. This is a book where the protagonist doesn't, or a story where the protagonist doesn't get what they want. Now, there are actual stories that are not what you might call a tragedy that end this way. An example that you're maybe familiar with is a movie, Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, the protagonist is Marlin, and Marlin wants Nemo to be safe 100%. He doesn't want anything to happen to him, and obviously he has to fail at that mission because that is not correct. He cannot allow nothing to happen to his son, or nothing will happen to his son, as the relationship character Dory explains to him. So you might have a story like that, already where maybe the character did fail, but most stories, the protagonist doesn't fail. The protagonist does, in fact, get what they want. But we're going to tweak that. Whatever story you were thinking about, now we're thinking this version of the story. Now the protagonist doesn't get what they want. So what is that? How do you make that successful? How do you make that not feel like a cop-out or a cheat or just unfulfilling? Well, make it to where what they want actually is somewhat bad for them or is the wrong thing for them. It is not what they need. And you're like, and maybe in the version of the story you're thinking of, it is what they need. Well, adjust that. Change what they need now. Tweak that a little bit and start playing with that story structure in your head a little bit. And as you dismantle it, you'll see how you can create this sort of situation where a character can end up in a fail state based on where they started, but not end up in a fail state in terms of the audience feeling they have accomplished something, their life has gotten better. Essentially, it's a happy ending. Now, of course, you can have sad endings, tragic endings, horrific endings, and it also work as well. But those are even more challenging to pull off and be satisfying, especially depending on the genre you're talking about. There's a lot of genres that don't really allow for that. All right. Oh, somebody, yes, with that prompt, you've got lots of places you can go with that. And what that means. All right. Write down an adjective. Do not share what it is. So just think about it to yourself. An adjective, a description of something, and you don't know what you're describing. So just think of something interesting, something fairly provocative, so that way it'll be an interesting next step. All right, and the next step is the blank box stood there waiting. All right, so what kind of box were you thinking of? Maybe it was a large box. Maybe it's a small box. Maybe it's an old box. Maybe it was a creepy box. Maybe it's a broken box. Purple, a purple box. Okay, purple is not a very common color for boxes. That makes me think of something maybe royal because you have a royal box. Or yes, it could be a present, right? A present of something. But I like the way it ends with the ... waiting implies something a little sinister, right? You have that pregnant pause, that hesitation. So maybe there's a reason why they don't want to open up this present. Maybe it's not entirely a present. Maybe it's one of those presents that will yield some sort of negative result. There's consequences to the present, or it'll hook them in some way. Monkey's paw sort of thing. What other ones do we have out there? I see you on YouTube. Feel free to use that chat box. What adjectives did we come up with? The blank box stood there, waiting. And this is a fun activity you can do anytime you want to brainstorm. Simply go through a random word list of adjectives and a random word list of nouns and mash them together. And just an adjective and a noun put together can sometimes prompt a lot of different thoughts because you just have to start asking questions. Why is it the way it is? What are the implications of that? What can that mean? All right. Write down a noun. Don't share what it is. Yes. Think of a noun. Person, place, thing, maybe even an idea. You can decide what you want. And we're going to go ahead with the noun. In a world where everyone wants a blank, I've decided to be different. So in a world where everyone decides they want a blank. So what are different things that you could have? You might have picked a very boring noun like a car. And somebody dared to be different. Well, then it's a story about somebody going against the grain. They don't want a car. Maybe it's just for the obvious reason, like environmental reasons or the fact that cars cause a lot of accidents. But maybe there's a more nefarious reason why they dared to be different, or there's a deeper reason, like they understand that cars really pose some sort of connection to something. Oh, and everybody wants a tree. I've decided to be different. Well, I mean, there's one context in which everybody wants a tree, which is Christmas time. So this is somebody maybe daring to be different. They want to celebrate the holiday in a different way, right? Which shows that they're a unusual person, maybe, or of a different religious persuasion. Or you could say this is a world in which everybody wants a tree like in their yard. But maybe there's a reason for it. Maybe it's not just as simple as decorative. Maybe these trees serve some sort of purpose. Maybe a tree is some sort of device that is a name of something that is like, it's like, an Echo or an Alexa or something, and you also have a tree. And what is that? What is that device that everybody wants, and why doesn't this person want it? What might it be? Something that sits out in the front lawn. Maybe it's some sort of security service or something, and this person doesn't want it because they're concerned that the security service is actually monitoring their behavior, or there is something else going on behind the scenes. All right. Here's a weird piece of news that is a fun story prompt. This is a fun thing to do, and that is look to weird news websites. There's a bunch of them out there. Just Google unusual news. You could find some aggregators. This one is reporting of a Scottish island for sale with an opening bid of $111,000. Now, the fun thing about this is that you often don't assume that a character might be able to do something like buy an island. But this goes to show you that perhaps truth is stranger than fiction, that it is possible to potentially own an island. Why might somebody buy an island? Is it something where they know there's something there? There's some sort of resource on the island that other people aren't aware of? Maybe they want to develop it for some reason. Maybe there's an animal on there that they're trying to preserve or something like that. Maybe they just want a really cool place to retire, and then it turns out there's consequences to buying some strange island in the middle of nowhere. Lots of different possibilities. Maybe somebody bought an island in the middle of nowhere in order to get out of the public eye because they have something that they just don't want other people to observe. All right. So those were some story prompts for you to think about. So hopefully you have some ideas and some thought-provoking story prompts and sentence starters and things like that. You can use any of them, and perhaps they'll prompt different things in your work or things such as that. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock, we will have our AutoCrit Live Power Hour. And tomorrow we will be discussing Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code. And we'll be doing a What's the Score, where we do a deep dive with the AutoCrit software and we analyze it. We see how it compares with other works in the genre. We see maybe what are the different verbal tics that an author like Dan Brown has, which is always fun to look at. So that is tomorrow at 1 p.m. At 7 p.m., I will be hosting Pitch It, where you can come on and you can pitch your story. And we accept a pitch at any level. So perhaps you are working on a manuscript and you're not sure if your original idea, your hook is quite solid enough. Feel free to pitch it. Maybe you even haven't started on it. You just have a nugget of an idea and you want to explore a little bit before you dive in. Feel free to brainstorm a little bit with us. Or maybe your whole manuscript is done. It's all, bundled up a nice little bow, but you're just not sure how to get people interested in reading it. What's your back copy look like? What's your blurb look like? What's that hook that will get the audiences interested? Feel free to pitch that as well. Treat us like we're an agent. And what if you were trying to get an agent to buy your book? That's really at the root of Pitch It. And it just helps you analyze your ideas, get to the nugget of them, and explore them from a marketing standpoint, from an audience standpoint. Gets you out of your head a little bit. And then, of course, we have Book Blender. On Book Blender, we blend up different characters. Like we could have, I don't know, Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz in ancient Egypt, and the villain could be Serial killer. You just never know what's going to blend up on Book Blender. And Book Blender is tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern. So a little late for those on the East Coast, but maybe those on the West Coast, you can join us. And otherwise, you can also watch the replay here on the AutoCrit Live channel or at autocrit.com/live. And if you ever want to get involved in any of our shows, be a part of our studio audience and chat here live, autocrit.com/live is a great place for you to check out our schedule and get involved in any of our shows. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on AutoCrit Live. This is Daniel coming in here from the AutoCrit Live studio, and I will be looking forward to seeing you on any of our shows tomorrow. We have, Power Hour at 1, Pitch It at 7, and Book Blender at 10. In the meantime, I will see you around. Bye, everybody!